Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. My name's Maile, and today I have 13 really freaking good books to share with you. So let's just jump right in, shall we? So I have read 13 books over the course of a little over a month, if I'm being honest. And let me just tell you, I read some really freaking good ones. So buckle in, strap up, because there's a lot to share in this video. Let me pull up my handy dandy Goodreads. And while I'm pulling that up, let me remind you to go ahead and subscribe down below so that you don't miss any of my book videos or any of my other vlogs. And it'll help us get toward our goal of hitting 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. So click that red subscribe button. Now that I've got Goodreads pulled up, the first book that, oh gosh, this may warrant its own video. It's already getting crazy. I honestly don't even remember if I talked about this or not, but the first book I read is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. Oh my gosh, what to even freaking say about this book. I really should make a Crescent City book series, but I probably won't do that until after whatever the last one comes out is. I think it's the 3rd, and it should come out like maybe late this year or next year. I don't freaking know. This book needs a bit of a preface, which is I love the ACOTAR series. In fact, I did a whole in-depth video that I will link right up here that you can go watch. Have I read Throne of Glass, and do I plan on it? No. From all the things I've heard about it, I would hate it, and I'm just not into the young adult genre whatsoever. So when I heard about Crescent City, I was of two minds of it. I was like, oh, another Sarah J. Maas series, either I'll love it or I won't be interested. I didn't sound super interested at the start, and I watched a couple of booktube videos about it and people had very, very mixed reviews, but I was willing to give it a try because specifically this is her first like adult fiction. This is just normal fiction. Well, I guess it's fantasy, but it's in the real grown-up section, you know what I'm saying? So I really liked Crescent City. There were many moments of Crescent City where I was like, what am I even reading right now? I'm so confused. She spent a lot of freaking time explaining the lore, setting up the universe in very non-organic ways that just like kind of annoyed me and made me go, I don't even understand what you're saying. I have no context for this. Like, I don't understand how this fits in the story. Like, just let me learn things organically as I read along about the world and the politics and the government. But it's almost like because it was her first like, you know, real grown-up book, she had to make it super political and super intricate and detailed. And it just like at times went over my head to the point where I was like, I don't even know what's happening right now. And that's not what you're supposed to feel in a book, you know? I love the main character of this. I love Bryce. I grew to love Hunt. I freaking love her brother. So there are a lot of really, really good characters in here that I love. I think Sarah J. Maas is really great at building characters. This world seems extremely convoluted. Once I got into the story of it, and you reach about halfway through, it's this murder mystery type thing mixed with a fantasy world, mixed with sort of a romance. It sucked me in eventually, and I really did like it. For all the problems it had with it, I gave it 3 stars, but I really enjoyed the story and I really liked the characters enough to read the second book, which I'll talk about in a second. But I gave this one 3 stars. Enough about Crescent City for now. Next up, I read The 4 Winds by Kristen Hanna. Okay, my cousin Harper recommended this book to me and another one of Kristen Hanna's books because she's like her favorite author. And I was like, this is not normally what I read. I don't normally read just like straight fiction. Sometimes I do, but it's not like something I would choose. But my gosh, I fell in love with this author. The way she writes, her stories, her characters are so incredibly compelling. What I love about at least her 2 books I've read, which I believe are much different than the very campy romance series she's known for that I haven't read yet. These books are very serious in tone, very realistic in tone, and are tied together by this theme, I guess you could say, of historically American settings. So this book, The 4 Winds, is set during the Dust Bowl. It follows a family living in Texas in poverty, farmers who all their crops deplete and their home gets freaking invaded with dust, and how they persevere. They decide to move to California, and that situation works out so differently than what they imagined. They work so hard to get there, and just, oh my gosh, I can't even put it into words how good this book is. I gave it 5 stars. I would have given it 6 if I could. I would give it 10 freaking stars. I fell in love with it so much. Her writing is it just draws you in and it makes you care about the characters. And I learned so much from this book. And I'm from Oklahoma, and so we learn about the Dust Bowl. Like, I know about the history of the Dust Bowl and learned about it in school. My state was one of the states most affected by it. And so I thought I knew a lot about the Dust Bowl. This book taught me so much about it. And man, this is one of those rare books that you think about for weeks afterward, and it just really impacts you. And man, I loved it so stinking much. 5 stars, easy. You should read this book. Okay, next up I read a book called Just My Type, which I really liked. It's a very short, super easy, kind of cheesy romance read, fluff, not a lot of depth to it, but I did really like it. The characters were well crafted. I liked the premise, which was that I believe she's a columnist for a paper and is wanting to be promoted and work on something else and is up for a promotion, but she has one person who's her competition, her high school boyfriend that she hasn't seen or talked to in like 10 years, who moves to her town and is hired by her job and is essentially up for the same job as her. So they have to compete for the job, which is not the most compelling part. The thing I really liked about it is it was a pining type situation where they both clearly still have feelings for each other. If you're looking for a fluff romance book with a happy ending, this is a great one. I gave it 3 stars because it wasn't anything special or unique, but I did still enjoy reading it. And I just love that cover. Isn't that cover so cute? Next up I read Thank You for Listening, which is by Julia Whalen, and I went down a rabbit hole with this book. I recently, as in only this year, have become an audiobook convert. I still prefer holding a physical book in my hand, or if I'm out and about, reading a book on my phone with my Kindle app. I never chose audiobooks in the past because I'm such a visual person that I easily lose my train of thought and my focus, and audiobooks are just hard for me to fully comprehend. And there's just something about physically reading the words that I love so much. And so I was kind of an audiobook hater for a while, but I don't know what changed. I recently just got into it this year and have loved audiobooks. And I've realized by reading this book, Thank You for Listening, that by the way is a really great book. It's about a very famous audiobook narrator who takes one last job in the romance genre that she hasn't touched for like 10 years. That's how she started her career. She left it to do fiction, got super famous as a fiction audiobook narrator, swore off doing love stories, and hadn't narrated one since, but gets a request from one of the most famous romance authors who recently passed to be the audiobook narrator on her final post-death book that's about to be released. And how could she say no? So the kicker is that it's a co-narration with the most famous male romance genre audiobook narrator who's goofy and she just does not like. They have to do it together. So it's a very cleverly designed romance. It's very unique, and I always love to find a romance story that isn't rewritten 500 times in other books you could pick up easily. It's certainly very unique, and I love that about it. But it's also very meta because it's written by Julia Whalen, who I did not realize until I started reading this book and it clicked. Julia Whalen is actually an audiobook narrator, and I've listened to her narrate a bunch of books. I recognized her voice instantly because of course she narrates the audiobook of her book that she wrote as well. So it's just very meta and cool. You learn a lot about the audiobook narration industry and what that's like, and it's just a very unique, fun story to read. I will say I didn't give it 5 stars because it felt a tiny bit contrived at points, and it was very predictable. I could tell exactly where it was going and what was happening, but I didn't dislike that about it. I don't mind that. I read so many books and so many of the same kind of books that I'm really good at knowing what's about to come. It's rare for a story to totally shock me and for me to not see what's coming. So that doesn't bother me so much, but I did just give it 4 stars for that reason. But otherwise, it was just so fun to realize who Julia Whalen is, to read her book she wrote about a world she knows well, and it was just so fun to put an author with a voice of many audiobooks that I've listened to that she's narrated. So that was super cool. Okay, the next book I read was Juliet Naked by Nick Hornby, who's the author of About a Boy and a bunch of other famous books out there. Eric actually recommended this to me because he thought I would like it. I did like it. I didn't love it. It is very much not my style of writing. Characters are very flawed characters on purpose because you're supposed to see the humanity and the flaws within them, but For me, there wasn't enough that was likable about the characters for me to really identify with them and root for them, and so I felt a little disconnected from the story. It's about a couple who've been together for years and years and years out of convenience. The man is basically the #1 fan of an artist from years ago who wrote one amazing album and fell off the face of the planet. And he runs blogs and websites about everything there could possibly be to know about this man who disappeared and his music. And he's just obsessed, #1 fan. She couldn't really care less. She likes the music, she likes the artist, but she does think it's a little weird how obsessed her longtime boyfriend is with this artist and where he ended up. And through very strange circumstances, she becomes pen pals with the artist. They strike up a friendship through email. Eventually she goes to meet him in person. They have a sort of romance. It just is very, I can tell it was a good book, but I didn't love it. It wasn't my kind of book. Eric loved it. I think he gave it maybe 5 stars, and he's read other Nick Hornby books since. But for me, it was just, I felt disconnected from the story, and I felt myself going, why do I care? Why do I care about these people? I don't. It was very well written. It just wasn't my cup of tea. So I gave it 3 stars. Okay, next I read the second Crescent City book, House of Sky and Breath, and man, I liked the second one better, actually. And I don't know if that's what most people's opinions are of the second book, or if they didn't like it as much as the first book. I liked how much more of the overarching war buildup and political conflict we got. I loved Hunt and Bryce's relationship in this one, although the stupid thing at the beginning where they're like, we're not gonna be together till solstice or whatever, that's so dumb. I did not like that. But it was way less of an issue than I thought it was going to be, so that was good. But my favorite subplot of this book was Bryce's brother. What's his name? I don't remember. Bryce's brother and his like mysterious love interest. I really liked that. I loved that we got so many different characters' perspectives in this book. I'm not gonna talk too much in depth about it because if you haven't read the series, then what do you care? But I did like it better and I gave it 4 stars. So I think it is certainly worth the read. And of course, without spoiling anything, if you are an ACOTAR mega fan like me, then you need to read this series for reasons that will become clear at the end of the second book, which was, honestly, after I read that, I was like, oh my gosh, you've got to freaking be kidding me. I don't know if I love this or I hate this or both at the same time. It's kind of both at the same time. Seems a little on the nose to me, but anyway, I won't spoil it. But I gave this one 4 stars and I definitely recommend reading this series, especially if you love ACOTAR. Okay, next up I read Happy Place by Emily Henry, which I'm not going to talk about because I did a whole video about Emily Henry's books and my full in-depth review on why I gave Happy Place 2 stars. I'll link it up there, but we're just gonna skip over that one and go to the next one, which is, I read Disney's Land, which, what's the full title of it? Walt Disney and the Invention of the Amusement Park That Changed the World. This is a nonfiction book about basically the creation of Disneyland. It follows Walt Disney's journey and oh my gosh, the journey that he went on to build and imagine Disneyland. It takes you all the way back to his childhood and follows you through the opening of Disneyland. It is incredibly fascinating, very fast paced. It's told in a very nice narrative way. It doesn't feel like a stuffy nonfiction book. It's very, very fascinating and gives you lots of insight into the theme parks and why they came to be and what kind of man Walt Disney was. And it was just so fascinating. If you are a Disney person, you will really, really like this book. It was so good. And I learned a crap ton of information about that process and Disneyland, and it makes me even more excited. I think we're gonna go to Disneyland next year, so stay tuned for that one. But I gave this book 4 stars because I really, really liked it. Okay, next up, I read the book The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, same author as The Four Winds that I talked about just a second ago. This is the best book I've read so far this year. I love it so much. It's everything that I loved about the style of her writing in The Great Winds. It is that same kind of general Americana history theme. This time, this is set in the 1960s and 70s-ish in Alaska as the state was being first developed, and it follows a family of hippies maybe, but not super hippie, just very anti-establishment, anti-government. The father served in the Vietnam War and was really messed up from it, has severe PTSD, is abusive to his wife, and sort of to his daughter as well. He moves them to the Great Alone, to Alaska, and they create a home in this very small, tight-knit community of people. You get to meet all these people and have a very realistic view of what it must have been like to survive in the frozen tundra of Alaska. You learn about how they basically made a home from the ground up. You meet so many interesting characters. You learn so much about just everything. This book is so incredibly good. It's one of those books I didn't want it to be over. I wanted to prolong reading the end because I was gonna be so sad when it was over. And I have not read a book like that in so long. 100 out of 10 stars. Could not recommend this book more. I loved it so much. And I will say, this book is just a tiny bit happier than The Four Winds. So if you read The Four Winds and you think, oh my gosh, this was so depressing all the way through, this one is not as depressing as The Four Winds. Now, I didn't mind that about The Four Winds at all, but if you're a little more sensitive, I would read this one first because it's a little easier to take in than The Four Winds, and it has a really great ending. I could not recommend this more. I obviously gave it 5 stars. I would give it 100 out of 5 if I could. Loved it so much. Kristen Hanna is like one of my new faves. I want to read her 3rd book that's apparently in the same style as this. I think it's called Nightingale. I think it's about a nurse in a wartime, not really sure, but I need to put that on my want to read list because I just love her so much. This is such an amazing book. You should read it. Then I read another nonfiction book. I read the book Cultish, which I will say, I listened to it on an airplane. Isn't this the coolest cover? I had to buy the book as well as listen to the audiobook because I just thought the cover was so beautiful. But this book is all about cults, and specifically the language of cults and how cults use specific discourse to draw people in. And it just goes through lots of different actual cults, culty-like things. Like there's an MLM chapter, and there's a fitness chapter, and there's a chapter about things that aren't cults but have very cult-like language and discourse around them. It was a very fascinating book, but it was definitely drier than I wanted it to be. I gave it 3 stars for that reason. There's so much good information in here, but it's a little bit like reading a textbook, just a little bit. It's certainly still worth picking up if you're interested in the subject of cults, because I found it compelling, but it wasn't the most fun read. You know what I mean? I mean, a book about cults probably isn't going to be the most fun read, but it was kind of boring at times. You have to be really into this topic to appreciate this book, I think. Okay, the next book I read was Homecoming by Kate Morton. If you've watched any of my book videos in the past, you probably have heard me talk about Kate Morton. She is one of my favorite authors of all time. I've read all of her books. This is her new one that just came out, and of course I had to get it and read it, and I loved it so much. She has a very interesting narrative structure. She tells stories that are threaded together by family and time. She has dual timelines going on, typically structured around some historic family location, like maybe a house. The family history and family story unfolds through at least 2, sometimes more than 2 different perspectives of people in that family. So this one is framed around a grandmother and her granddaughter. The granddaughter flies back home to Australia, where her grandmother, who raised her and took care of her, is dying. And the granddaughter is kind of I think an investigative journalist, maybe some type of writer. And she starts to unravel this secret of her grandmother's past about the murder-suicide of a mother and her 4 children that the granddaughter finds out was part of their family. And her grandmother was there for the experience, but never shared it with her. And so it's the granddaughter trying to investigate what happened, and a lot of crazy twists and turns along the way. I love reading Kate Morton books because they feel like a puzzle piece that really don't come together until the very end. Like I said earlier in the video, it's really easy for me to guess the plot of a book and see where it's going. It's rare for me to find a book that really keeps me questioning and wondering what's going to happen without figuring it out. Kate Morton's books are like that. They are complicated enough that they don't really truly come together fully until the very end. And I love that. It's just such a satisfying thing to read. Her characters are very well built, very layered. It's one of those books that you learn more as you read, more unfolds. It's kind of a slow burn, but in a still like murder mystery, you want to keep turning the pages kind of read. They're comfort books for me, definitely, but also not like lighthearted fluff easy reads either. They're deep and meaningful and just so good. I freaking love Kate Morton. She's an incredible writer. I recommend any of her books. I've read them all. I loved this one a lot. I gave it 4 stars. My favorite book by her, I think, is The Clockmaker's Daughter, which actually is her second most recent book after this one. But you really can't go wrong reading her books at all. She's a phenomenal author, and I very much enjoyed this one. Okay, then I read a book Eric recommended to me called Joyful, and it's got a longer title too. Let me tell you the whole title. It's called Joyful: The Surprising Power of Ordinary Things to Create Extraordinary Happiness. So this was a very interesting read. It was written by a woman who I believe has at least an interior design degree. I don't know if she's a practicing interior designer or an author or both. She's probably just both. But she set out to research and figure out what ordinary, mundane things bring people joy. She just investigates joy and all the different types of activities and feelings and circumstances that bring people joy. It was a very interesting book to read for the first half. The second half, I thought, got pretty darn repetitive, and she just, to me, kept stating the same concept, using different examples to display it, but was basically just saying the same thing over and over again. The thing I thought was very interesting and unique about this book that I really liked was she was framing this experiment through the lens of interior design. And so she was saying, this thing brings joy. Here's how you can edit your space to showcase this thing and bring yourself more joy in your mundane life. My problem with that, though, was that it was very basic. So it was things like being out in nature brings people joy because you are surrounded by life and you feel a sense of freedom from nature. So put plants in your house and you can experience more nature from that. And it didn't really teach me anything profound. It didn't really teach me anything that I didn't already know. And not because I'm some giant interior design expert, but because I felt that the things that she was drawing conclusions about and giving advice to people on were just very basic. I mean, simple things like paint your walls light and bright. White is the best color to fill your space with, but if you don't want to do white, then do a bright color. Don't fill your walls with dark colors because that will affect your mood. Like, yeah, that's pretty simple advice, you know? So it wasn't revolutionary to me. Eric read it and he really got a lot more out of it than I did, and it was revolutionary to him. And so I think it just depends. It didn't hit me very well. I gave it 3 stars, almost 2 stars, honestly, because it was so repetitive at the end that I just skimmed a lot of it. But I did finish it. Okay, and then the last book I read, you guys are gonna laugh. The last book I read was Paris Hilton's new book, which I believe is called Paris the Memoir. You guys. A little preface, I watched Paris Hilton's documentary that came out on YouTube, I think, back in the height of the pandemic, and was blown away by it. Loved it. It shed such an amazing light on the scandal that is child abuse at these behavioral camps for troubled teens that parents would get hoodwinked into sending their kids to, and Paris Hilton was abused at 4 of those schools, and she goes in depth in that documentary about her experience and her severe PTSD from it, and how because of that experience and how much it stunted her, she built this whole persona of Paris Hilton, the dumb blonde with the baby voice that we see all over the media, to shield herself because she was so broken and hurt from that experience. I mean, the documentary blew my mind. It was incredibly well done. I loved it so much. It made me have so much respect for Paris Hilton, and I've been fascinated with her ever since. So when this book came out, I was like, of course I'm reading that. And it was even more in-depth than the documentary. It was so compelling to read. The things that this woman went through and then shoved down and didn't share and didn't talk about for years and years and years, while the public totally destroyed her for a person that she really isn't even actually. It's amazing. And to see the kind of business mogul she is and how she's built this empire off this persona and just made so much money, and how privileged she is too, which I think she does a really good job of recognizing and checking her privilege in the book, which I appreciated. It was fascinating. It was endlessly fascinating to read. I love reading a good celebrity memoir. I love reading about real life human stories that are different from mine. I just find people's experiences endlessly fascinating. And this book was so, so, so good. I gave it 4 stars. I loved it. I definitely recommend it and the Paris Hilton documentary. If you like stuff like that, you will definitely like this and the book. So that's it. Those are the 13 books that I read this month, and man, were some really good ones in there. Let me know down below if you have any recommendations for me on what I should read next. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!